My name is Mark Sadlek. I'm an editor for film and TV. I also direct a little bit. Mike Schur from Parks and Recreation would say that we are the final rewrite of the script. So we bring in all the raw footage from all the dailies from the shoot days, and we put it together into episodes of television or into feature films. We analyze the script and look for the subtext of the underlying stories going along with the expositional, story. And we build an episode, and we add music, and we pace it up where it needs to be paced up, and we slow it down where it needs to be slowed down. And then when it goes through a whole process of, I have my editors kind of present that to the director of that episode of that film, and then they've got their time with it, and then the director presents it to the executive producers, and then the executive producers will present it to a studio or network. And I'm there for the entire process of addressing notes, making suggestions, until a final cut and a final program or film is complete. There are huge differences between editing feature films and television. The biggest one being time. I would say for a half an hour of television, we usually get a total of 8 or 9 days to cut. For the film I'm cutting now, for my first cut, I think I'm going to get 8 weeks. And it's essentially going to be about 3 episodes, to be like an hour and 20 minutes, something like that. That's the biggest difference, is just having more time to work on it. And also the pacing is a huge difference. Television, things are paced up. It's cut more quickly to fit into a half an hour, and you can expand that for a half an hour. And then for film, you can expand that even more and really open it up for the emotion of a dramatic part of a film, and then speed it up for the comedy. That's the biggest difference. You've got more time to craft a film than you would a television program. So the kind of skills you need to be an editor are, you need people skills, you need technical computer skills, you need, experience and understanding of how to run the software, whether it's Avid or Adobe Premiere. It helps to have a good sense of music, a good sense of rhythm. It helps to be able to read performances, because basically in scripted editing, you are spending your day picking the best performance and trying to pick the best performance for your character's storyline and where they need to be emotionally, or also just for the story as well. Like what's going to tell your story the most clearly, and give an audience the idea of where your character is emotionally and where they are, as far as the direction of the story too. My first job as an editor wasn't even really in the business. I started out really getting a passion for editing by cutting friends' music videos for their bands in San Diego, and that led to short documentaries about surf trips to Mexico. And then a friend's sister worked for MTV, and so I started PAing and then working in the post department as a post coordinator and a post producer. And I was giving editors notes as a post producer, and it just got frustrating, and giving notes, and I just let me do it. Just let me sit down. And so I sat down, and my job became completely creative. And I became the editor, picking all those edit choices. And my first job, it was for Behind the Music. I cut the Guns N' Roses Behind the Music. It was the most fun, because in that series, we could, you get to use all the band's music. I was a big fan at the time. And, I went on to cut Backstreet Boys and LL Cool J, so many bands. And then I continued on reality with MTV and VH1. I eventually moved over to Mark Burnett and cut The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and Expedition Africa, a passion series for him. And I kind of got to the top of the reality heap and decided that I didn't like the top of that reality heap. And so I made the move over to scripted, which was, moving from reality to scripted. I might as well be like a fireman or a policeman, and that's the way I think scripted looks at reality editors. But luckily, I was able to make a jump onto a show that was shot like a documentary, so it felt very much like a reality. It was a show called Zach Stone's Gonna Be Famous with Bo Burnham. It was a show that was too smart for MTV. It was shot like Parks and Recreation or The Office, very docu-style, and so my reality editing lent itself to that. And then that led to Chelsea Handler's show After Lately, which is basically a scripted version of what behind the scenes of her talk show. And then that led to Parks and Recreation, which was a huge jump. And I got really lucky with landing that show. Did 3 seasons of amazing television for that series. And then that led to other projects for HBO and Showtime, and most recently 5 seasons of Insecure on HBO. I got the pilot, I cut every premiere and every finale for every season of that show, an Apple show, and now I'm on a feature. Yeah, the number one thing we look for as an editor, it's not creating a clear story, although that's up there. That's number two, I think. But it's about creating emotion in an episode or in a film. When people walk away from an episode of TV or a feature film, they remember how they feel before they think about how clever the story was told or about the great music or about the great, action or special effects. It's how they felt about it. And so I think as an editor, the hardest part is going to each scene and looking for the subtext, looking for the hidden story in the scene. What does the scene really mean? Instead of the exposition of, this character needs to find this to do this or whatever their journey is. You got to find out what's the emotion of that scene, what's the emotional journey of your character, and try and dig that out with music, with performances, with pacing. Hopefully your director used some shots that really help that along too. And that's the biggest challenge for sure. I'm going to give away now what is my biggest piece of advice for becoming an editor. And that is to cut as much as you can. Cut everything and anything you can get your hands on. Whatever a friend has it. If you're in school, find making films or creating pilots, music videos, documentaries, commercials, concerts, anything. Just cut anything and everything and then find out what you like doing the best. Find out like cutting concerts the best. If you like cutting films the best, maybe you like documentaries the best. And then focus on that. As quickly as you can, try and figure out what you like to do the best. And then not only that you're stuck with that people only think of you in that capacity, like that editor is just a comedy editor, or that editor is just a documentary editor. And I think if you can diversify, you can also keep it fresh for yourself. So the only other thing I could recommend about becoming a good editor is just to find those films and TV shows that are regarded as being something that's well cut and study those shows and study those movies, but also create your own style. I mean, it's about like taking something from that and then improving on it.